So that compost outside is sitting well over 100 degrees. We were sitting about 110 is what I was measuring, and that's pretty darn good for being pretty chilly outside. We're sitting maybe 23, 24 degrees outside right now. We're getting sleet, freezing rain and snow and just wintry mix crap. It's pretty darn cold, but we've been doing a ton of work in the greenhouse getting prepared for spring here. And one of the things we've been doing is starting plants with compost. We are talking about sprouting seeds with compost heat, and we're going to show how we've been doing it. It's this little contraption behind me here, but if that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing to the channel, because that's pretty much all we do is share free heating ideas. Now let's get into today's video. So for about a month and a half, we've had warm weather crops coming out to the greenhouse to be sprouted, to be planted, to be transplanted. We've got an absolute ton of crops down at the other side of the greenhouse. So we can run down here and check all these real quick. Just tons of plants all over. Table's full, the floor is full. Just lots and lots of crops taking up basically this whole side of our greenhouse here, just getting ready for the farmer's market. So for the last month and a half also, we've had single digit temperatures all the way up to 70 degrees during the day, and obviously the single digits overnight. But in dealing with those cold temperatures, this greenhouse has not fell below 42, 43 degrees, even when we had negative temperatures overnight all throughout the winter. And last night was no different. We saw a temperature of about 47 degrees, and we had high teens and low 20s, about 20 degrees for an overnight temperature with sleet and rain and stuff like that. So we're doing pretty good as far as keeping this greenhouse insulated and keeping it warm, but keeping those certain warm weather crops from dying when they're very, very early and young as seedlings. Getting those seedlings the heat they need is very important. So being able to sprout all of these crops down right where our compost heat comes out, and then pushing them down to the other side of the greenhouse to really grow and be protected under our shade cloth. This is our heating location where we build most of the heat and store thermal mass in this water tank behind me. I'm going to show what we got going on back here. I just wanted to talk about what we're doing first. Keeping a constant temperature control or climate control in your greenhouse is very important. Temperature and humidity are very important in the beginning phases and starting all of those crops. And we have all of these crops up on tables and kind of raised up because in that first phase of life, when the seed starts to sprout, everything is seeking those out to eat them. Any type of vole, mole, rat, mouse, any type of rodent would love to eat any type of seedling almost. So I've found that putting them up on tables and giving that extra level of protection really ensures a good success rate. Even if you've got a good success rate, doing everything right, having success in the greenhouse, you could have a rodent come through and rip up a whole tray. That might be your whole crop for that first market season, and you're trying to get all of that planted in the ground and it's eaten before you can even get it transplanted. So just trying to head off and acknowledge simple problems like that we've had in the past ourselves. I just want to share that with everybody. You can't always keep the greenhouse as warm as you'd like it, or you can't afford to. It's just very hard to keep a greenhouse warm. We've spent a lot of time and effort, not a whole lot of money, to invest into this greenhouse to ensure all of these systems that we're running and the greenhouse itself is nice and protected, insulated, and going to stay warm throughout the entire winter. And there's no more important time for us than late winter, early spring, getting all of our market crops started and our own garden crops started. So the very beginning of our season starts with last winter's compost heater. So we're still heating. I just showed the compost heater was 110, and by the time I brought it in here it was about 101, 100 degrees. So we've had a lot of moisture, and I've allowed that moisture to get into the pile, and then I cover it back up. I threw a bunch of chicken poo that was inoculated into a slurry. So I mixed a bunch of chicken poo in a 5-gallon bucket, stirred it up with a bunch of water, and just doused it across the whole entire pile. Did that with like maybe 3, 4, 5 buckets maybe, and then let the rain it in, and that temperature really spiked back up. So nitrogen is a huge factor in getting hot compost. So where that compost heat is going is into a large tank. Like I said, we're gonna jump down here and check this out. So at first glance, we've got a big tarp of poly rolled up. This was one of our tunnel covers for one of our tunnels on this side of the greenhouse. So I basically just rolled this up, and you can see a whole bunch of sprouting crops. I was just checking on this so it's uncovered, but we had it fully covered. It's nice and warm in there. sitting about 58. Let's get inside there. 56, 55. So that is warm as we can keep it right now. I've been tracking between 50 and 60 degrees being kept inside here. So all of this compost heat, we are not currently blowing the fan right at the moment. It's sporadically turning on and off. So it jumped on for a sec. Here's this fan blowing the compost heat down, all the way down through and into this large compost pile out back here. So it transfers through the ground up under this large board to hold it back. And then it coils up through the whole pile. I suggest looking at the build video so you can get a better idea. But as that compost heated air from inside the greenhouse comes in, it comes back out, and I put a little cap on it to keep rodents or anything from going inside. But it's blowing up underneath here, and it's catching all of that heat inside this. I had it a little better wrapped. I was just checking on it. So we've got several layers of plastic. I can just pull this off now since we're out here. So now you can kind of see what we were doing and how we were doing it here. This was just to protect our plants from getting crushed by the actual tarping itself, because it was kind of heavy. We have maybe 8 layers wrapped up all together just as a good insulation. So let's jump down here and check. So we're sitting on top of this tank of water, and this tank of water is probably about 55 degrees or so, I think I measured. So that is what we held from overnight. We get it up to maybe 65, 70 degrees at the most during the daytime. While we're running all of that, there's 110, 120 gallons of water, so it's a lot to heat up. And we're running it at a very slow rate here, very slow trickle when it's actually running. We have tons of videos of this operating. It's just a very, very gloomy day. The sun's just breaking, but it's really overcast and still raining and stuff. So we've got all of this sweet basil. If anybody knows how hard it is to grow basil when it's cold out, it does not like any type of cold temperatures. We've got some of our purple basil popping up over here, some bell peppers, lots and lots of tomatoes. So we got a ton of crops that we'll just cycle through here, and we can set up another one of our little screens here. These are just our sifters that we use. We've got tons of these that we've made for bricks and soil, rocks, all types of stuff, compost. So we can just set another one up right next to this. We can do at least 5 to 6 crops all sprouting at the same time. And as these start to sprout and grow, we will take these tomatoes and move them down there to the other end where they'll be in the shade, protected from the sun, and they are no longer in need of that extra bottom heat from the compost heated water and all of that compost heated air blowing in and basically just capping this with a piece of poly. So we're able to blow that heat in, kind of trap it down on the plants. Like we had this little cage on top, so there was a nice 4-inch air gap that those were being heated to 70, 80 degrees all day and partially through the night, while we also have this water being heated. And this water is just radiating up. It's not very close to it. It's probably about 6 inches away from the top of the water to the bottom of the flats. But having this big thermal mass of water really, really benefits these crops, I've noticed, because when we try and sprout them down here on their own, I won't have the best success rate. See a bunch of fish in that pond. We'll be discussing that later. So just trying to get everything to sprout, you really, really need the extra bottom heat. These tomatoes were brought down here already. Tons of crops. My wife's lemon tree right there. There is so many crops here that we have started and sprouted with that same exact method I just showed everybody. We've got all our aquaponics here, a really, really loud truck over there somewhere. Tons of crops, trying to get that sweet potato to sprout some shoots on it so we can get some sweet potato runs off there. Tons of crops. Everything is looking amazing. That's why I love to use this greenhouse and the shade cloth and the double layer insulation, just because it benefits all these crops so much. All these little tomatoes and peppers and everything just have the perfect environment to get started. We're going to continue to fill these tables up, and we are running out of room. So You see our little compost fan. We got a little bit more sun breaking through now as the morning is starting up better here. I came out here super early, so we're getting a little bit of water flow in here. We're getting our compost heated air. I am going to cover this back up just like it was, so these crops, minus the tomatoes which are coming out, so these crops can continue to sprout and grow. I want to protect these little tiny basils a little bit longer than the rest because they really don't like the cold. So I really wanted to share that method with everybody for getting those seeds started. So we don't have to start them indoors anymore. We used to have to start them under lights or in the garage under lights and just keep them warm enough. Now we've got the right conditions and the right setup to where I could expand upon this and have an even larger tank. And just the thermal capacity of that water alone would probably keep those plants warm enough to be able to sprout if you encapped them with some type of poly or something, a tarp, anything that's clear and allows some sunlight in. If anybody's got any questions on this one, this is something I just wanted to share with everybody to show how we're doing it without having to use any electricity. Basically, we're just using all of the free energy we've got from solar power, free heat from our compost, and the thermal mass of that huge tank of water. So I'd like to thank you guys for checking this out, and until next time.